Welcome back to the Yes We Can podcast. Today, my guest, I'm very excited to introduce him, Dr. Henry Roca. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I know. I love your positivity. Your positive attitude is infectious. I have a feeling this is going to be a good show.
I hope so. It is one of the things that we can do to protect our health the most is
Oh,
to
gosh.
have our mental health and our stress resiliency like on par.
Yeah, I agree. It's something I battle every day. So, for those of you watching, Dr. Henry Roca is a physician at Palm Health. I have recently become more interested, involved in Palm Health and what you guys have to offer. It's right in line with um, my business, my podcast, my blog, how I'm trying to live my life and help others live their life. And so I'm really, really grateful for your time today, as I know you're really busy, but I know that you have an extensive background in education and really are doing wonderful things. So I wanted you to come on and talk with our guests really about what you were talking about: mental health, physical health. There's so much out of our control, but really we want to talk about what we can do that's in our control to help us live a longer and healthier life. So,
I think that's what the future of medicine needs to be.
mhm,
Right now, many of your listeners and followers probably have experienced the name it, blame it, tame it kind of an approach where you're not sick until it has a name and there's a medicine that goes along with it. And that is the extent of what is often offered. So for us to change our health trajectory as individuals, communities, families, the nation, we need to move away from that and more into a medicine that is personalized, very specific to the individual. Right. I'll,
mhm,
I'll tell you, when I work with a patient, we work to develop a hypothesis of the individual,
mm,
not how you fit within a population, but how you came to be who and how you are now.
mm.
Understanding how that winds up gives us an opportunity to perhaps work to unwind it. And then it needs to be predictive. So it's not just where you are now, but given what's gone on in your past, your overall family history, where is it that you're headed to? I had a conversation
Mhm.
with a person about that this morning that we might get into in a little bit. But it's
Okay.
like, this is a way to think about things. If you think about these things in this way, you will hopefully never get there. But
Right.
the idea that you can really predict what might happen, and that gives you the opportunity to be preventive. So that idea of doing everything that we can to keep ourselves healthy and to avoid illness. So
Mhm.
personalized, predictive, preventive, and proactive, which means take charge, take the reins of your health. Only
Mhm.
you can do it. Please don't wait for a pill to fix choices that could have been different.
I love that. So, a couple questions as you're talking about this, and real quick, Dr. Roca, can you give us your educational background? Because my producer and I were doing some research, and there's some really big name schools and accreditations behind your name. So, I'd like for the guests for you to kind of share your education and background and how you got to where you are today at Palm Health, treating patients this way versus the traditional way.
Well, remarkably, I have only ever treated patients this way.
Amazing.
So I started off actually as a complementary medicine provider. The first thing that I learned was massage. And then mind body approaches, nutrition, different kinds of supplements. And at some point, I was like, okay, let's see, what will my future hold? And I decided and really was called to hold the space between this whole person, large mind, body, spirit, right? Whole health, integrative medicine piece, and reductionist medicine. So I went back to become a traditionally trained physician so I could bring both of those worlds to balance, which at the time was a very unusual path. And so my medical school is at LSU. And then I went to Marshall University for residency. After that, I've been associated with Yale, with LSU, with Marshall University, with University of Arkansas for medical sciences, always staying on staff at these places. I was the among the first folks to be certified in integrative medicine and in functional medicine. So
Mm,
I have really been there as part of this movement from the beginning, serving on the American Holistic Medical Association Board of Directors and the Academic Consortium for Integrative Medicine and Health. Um, so, yeah, it's been my passion. This is absolutely my passion.
amazing. And thank you for doing that. I know traditional schooling and medication and, it's just it takes outliers. It takes people that go against the grain to make a difference, right? So I don't know how much do you know about my story? Do you know much?
Please tell me your story.
Okay. Quick, I'll give you the quick Cliff Notes version because it's very long. But just so you
Uh-huh.
know where I'm coming from, I've struggled with anxiety and depression on and off my life. My parents divorced when I was young. There's alcohol on both sides, not naming, blaming anybody, but I bounced from house to house. Um, and, have struggled with that my whole life and got married when I was 30. My husband was 40. He also has a similar story. His parents were not divorced, but a similar story. And we decided to live our life, we wanted to live our life differently. And we got married and started having children very quickly. We had 3 kids in 3 years. I had left my life and in California and the Midwest and well, now I'm back in the Midwest. Married him and moved to St. Louis. Things happened very quickly. We had 3 kids in 3 years. We moved to Toronto in the middle of that, came back, and then when my middle daughter was 9 months old, we found out we were pregnant with my 3rd child, and it was the day of the pandemic shutdown. So, and actually, truly, the pandemic shutdown gave us more time with my husband because he was a busy executive at Edward Jones, and so we actually got time with him. And then when my youngest son, was 11 months old, after basically right after he was born, my husband had some severe stomach issues. Unbeknownst to us, he had pancreatic cancer that had been growing for about a year that we know of, and then was finally diagnosed stage 4 pancreatic cancer in October of 21 when my son was 11-month old. So I had a 4, a 2, and 11-month old. Um, and mind you, my family's in Omaha. My mom passed away actually, it's today the 18th. Tomorrow will be 11 years tomorrow. And so, not a poor me, I'm a victim, but like there's been a lot of cards stacked against me, us, that weren't really in our favor. And my oldest daughter's sitting right next to me right now because she has strep throat. So this will be interesting to hear her feedback after this conversation. But my point in telling you is that I've done the traditional medicine route, and the last basically since my husband died, passed away April 3rd, 2023. I've started to dig more into the holistic piece. I'm trying to figure out how do I calm my nervous system. How do I do things again, control the things that I can control and let go of the others. But it's been very difficult. I'm being treated for PTSD. It's been a mess. And this show isn't about me, but I think my story is relevant and it's why I have this podcast. I'm trying to turn pain into purpose and I bring in professionals like yourself to come help not only me but others because there are a lot of other people in my shoes, not exactly in my shoes, but have gone through trauma, have grown up in stress and anxiety or what have you. And so I'm taking it seriously, and I know for those of you that are listening that taking it seriously, you're the kind of person that I wanna come talk to and help me figure out, but there's always this piece in the back of my mind and everyone else's mind, and that's money. How much is this gonna cost? We already pay for insurance, I'm paying for private education. Life is expensive. So, that's who I am. That's where
Say
I'm at. Yeah,
life is always a question of investments, and some
right,
things are like the things you just have to invest in, right? I
correct,
mean, there's no choices about that.
right,
And then there are some times that we find that we might have wished we would have made that investment. Seemed to be
yeah,
big at the moment, but with everything that it cost over time, um, probably would have been better to put that investment earlier on. And that's
Right.
often how I encourage people to think about health. Far too often health is sort of put off when it's good, and we don't invest a lot into it,
Mhm,
and then we end up with these
mhm,
diagnoses and wish that maybe we had done something else about it, right?
mhm,
So when we think about how do we ensure good health, now that could be metabolic health, that could be working on inflammatory issues, that could be working on cancer issues. And so much of these things are part of a continuum. Now, mind you, that doesn't mean that the continuum that I'll describe is the only way it can go or the only cause for different kinds of illnesses. There are always other potential reasons.
mhm.
But very often in our country, in the United States, we start off at a young age as children, starting to have poor nutrition, lots of sweets, lots of carbs, lots of
Sugar cane
juices,
corn?
low protein, very few non starchy vegetables, things that don't grow under the ground. So, like
Mhm,
carrots, potatoes don't count. I mean, they're not necessarily unhealthy in all cases. No corn, no peas. Right? Those tend to be the big things people eat as vegetables, but they're all starchy. They're all carbs. So we start off as kids eating those kinds of things, right? Your vegetarian child is really a carbohydratarian child, as
okay.
opposed to a true vegetarian. They just like their macaroni. But so we start off there, and already we're developing a metabolic system that is reactive instead of proactive.
Mm,
And eventually, if that continues, then come into different kinds of weight issues. And we're talking that these happen in children and adolescents these days, right? Less activity, more screen time, more stress, more
mm,
expectations, more concepts about how life should be because we
mhm,
get this through our social media, and more and less satisfaction in general. So we go through childhood with this low level place of dissatisfaction, not knowing our place, having a lot of carbs, having metabolic challenges. And as we move further in life, that continues to develop, right? Metabolic inefficiency, being overweight, being
mhm,
obese, being highly stressed, not very active. Very often, it also shows up as problems with sleep. And those are like the four horsemen of disease, right? Poor sleep,
yeah,
high stress, poor metabolic resilience, which, we just sort of talked about that, and low movement. Now, once that happens, okay, so then we start to develop blood sugar problems and inflammation. And those two things are all very related to this overall trajectory. And it used to be this didn't happen until people were in their 40s. This happens to adolescents now with
okay.
high inflammation, high body weight, pre-diabetes, diabetes. So, first things to drop usually are related to stress and sleep. And then it's related to weight. And then it's related to blood sugar resilience. And then it moves into cardiovascular disease, which is high cholesterol and high
Mhm,
blood pressure and plaque development in arteries. So that again, young people are having these kinds of challenges. And
mhm,
once it moves from there into the place of inflammation, then we start getting pain. And that can be arthritis or that can be muscle pain. As it continues to evolve, we get into the realm of cancer.
mm,
Literally, this trajectory leads to higher rates of cancer. And
mhm,
finally, when we're in our older years, and mind you, it used to be really folks in their 80s. Now it's folks in their 70s, and now even folks in their 50s and 60s have early onset Alzheimer's disease. And it's
mhm,
part of the same continuity, it's the same continuum.
mhm,
Starts as a child with the kinds of foods we're trained with, the kinds of expectations that we have, this
mhm,
place of not having a sort of not understanding our place in the world and having dissatisfaction. And it leads through all of those steps ultimately to challenges in the brain.
Mm,
So it's pretty interesting to think that there is this continuity and we are seeing it march through time. In the 90s and 2000s, we saw the increase in the overweight and in obesity. And
mhm,
then we saw the increase in pre-diabetes and diabetes. And now we're seeing increases in certain kinds of cancer, not all, right? Because some overall cancers have actually decreased in their incidence. There may
mhm,
be more people with it because there are more people living, but there's fewer new cases a year, with the exception of some kinds of cancers. And y'all's was one of them, pancreatic cancer.
mhm.
Pancreatic, prostate, uterine, kidney, all of those cancers in the last 5 years have increased in frequency.
That's the truth.
And
Yes.
every once in a while, I'm going to take a breath so that you can speak. Because as you can tell, you just set me going and I can keep going for the whole time.
I know. Well, I love it. And that's why I brought you on, right? For your expertise. You've seen the patients, you've seen the diseases, you know. I just know as a cancer wife, a cancer widow, now with 3 children, trying to manage life in this crazy busy world, I am stressed out majority of the time. I have a lot of responsibility on my plate, and I'm pretty serious about what my children eat. My kids know and roll their eyes at me. My oldest is sitting right here. We talk about sugar all the time, right, Cora? We talk about sugar all the time. They know we talk about protein all the time. And I'm not the greatest thing ever, right? But I really take it seriously. And sometimes it's to an extreme. I will admit. Sometimes it is. Um, but I want to talk about here, just for those of you that are listening, what vegetables would you recommend? What vegetables should we be buying from the grocery store and feeding our children? What would you recommend?
Well, first of all, let's just review that idea of the non starchy versus the starchy vegetables.
Love it.
So, the starchy vegetables are going to be things that grow under the ground. Now, it doesn't mean that they are all unhealthy, but if that's your only vegetable source, then you're having a large carbohydrate load going in all the time. Those are sweet potatoes and potatoes, carrots, beets, turnips, rutabaga, parsnips, those kinds of vegetables. And then if you can put the word sweet in front of them under any circumstance, then they're going to be high sugar vegetables. So corn, sweet corn, peas, sweet peas, those kinds of things are more starches, carbohydrates, than they are non-starchy vegetables. So the non-starchy vegetables are all the other things. And, amazingly, sometimes people say, well, what are those? And that's just an indication of how restricted our diet is. I'm going to pause just a bit and say that we speak to ourselves, literally, we speak language to ourselves with the foods that we eat, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink. Those inputs are literally language to ourselves.
Mm,
So if we're speaking something like, carb language to ourselves, then that's like speaking Russian to an English speaking cell, right?
mhm,
The cells don't understand that as a message for health. Non-starchy vegetables are the language of health. Literally, the things that give them color and flavor are our chemical language that turn our cells on and help them heal. You want to recover from any kind of chronic disease, especially inflammatory diseases, even working with cancer, non-starchy vegetables is the key. You want your cells to heal, you want your DNA to repair. Non-starchy vegetables are the key. So, what are those kinds of things? Well, there are things like the cruciferous vegetables, right? Broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kale, any of the green leafy vegetables, any of the squashes, things like peppers and tomatoes, eggplant, cucumbers, celery, onions. The list goes on. But all of those kinds of things will be positive healing language to the cells. Now, if you happen to eat only one kind of thing, and that's what happens when folks says, "Well, what are those non-starchy vegetables?" It means that
mhm,
they're eating really restricted kinds of diets, and for most folks in our country, that's going to involve gluten and dairy.
mhm.
So almost every day, sometimes every meal, you're going to get something related to gluten or grains in your diet, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and snacks, and something related to dairy. When that happens, think of it as speaking to your cells, not in a sophisticated way, not in the way we're talking here right now, but as if a 2 year old or a 3 year old is speaking to you. Right?
Hmm.
There's language, there's communication, but there's not a lot of nuance. There's not a lot of variety. You can understand what's happening, but you don't get a whole lot of direction. So if you have the same thing going in every day, then you're speaking to your cells like a 2 year old would or a 3 year old would.
Hmm.
So variety, variety, variety. Have as many different kinds of these non starchy vegetables as possible. When you're working with your protein, vary your protein. Um, Make sure that you really aren't eating the same thing more than 2 or 3 times a week, and that is critical if
This is
you want your
huge.
gut health to really settle in, any
Mhm.
gut to have a chance to heal, have a chance to reset, it can't receive the same input over and over, right? The same input over and over taxes our digestive systems. So you really want to rotate and vary your meals, your diet.
Wow.
Again, I'm pausing just so we can move on to other topics.
Yeah. No, I love this. My brain is just going, 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 and I'm listening and soaking this in. And I hope my viewers are listening and soaking this in because, you know, as you know, there's all sorts of outside influences, right? Influencers, advertising companies, marketing, social media, and there's all these different messages. And it's all about getting back to the basics, right? Learning what to eat, how to eat it. So this is important information. And I hope that people are listening. And I always say we can change the future. Together we can move mountains, right? So if we all educate ourselves and try to feed our children and ourselves this way, um, I think we can move mountains, and I think our healthcare system and everything can change. Now, what are your thoughts on organic versus non-organic? Is that, what are your thoughts on that?
Um, so if you go to the environmental working group, it'll give you the dirty 15 and the clean 15.
Mhm.
And so the dirty 15 are the most important things that we should look for organic. And that'll be things like your green leafy vegetables, a lot of berries. Those things should be organic. They're so small you're not going to really be able to clean them very easily from the outside. Other things not as important are the things that have thick skins that you're not really going to eat. So things like melons and cantaloupe and avocados, things like that. Even apples, you can peel it now. A lot of the good nutrients come from the apple peel, but there's so many chemicals and waxes put on it that if you're going to eat apples, you should probably get something organic. Wherever possible, buy organic. That's going to be the best option. And the reason is because without those chemicals on them, the plant itself has to make its own insecticides,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Now, what are the plant insecticides? We taste that as flavor. The
mm.
things that give plants flavor, especially a little bit of that bitterness, those are the plant's insecticides. And those are the molecules that our cells are specifically designed to receive and receive as a trigger for healing cellular mechanisms. So the more the plant has to do its own work to fight off any kind of pests in its environment, the more we're going to get those good molecules coming in and programming our cells to heal.
Wow. So the argument I get from people is, does organic really matter? I never ate organic. My kids seem fine. It's too expensive. I need to find something easy for busy moms, busy dads, whoever's providing the meals. What do you say in response to that? It's
Well,
busy. I'm busy and I don't have the money.
I say yes.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
so yes means that yes, all of those experiences are true. Now, when is it that it's even more important to go organic? Right. So we have to think about how we heal and how we detoxify. So if you are sensitive to medications, if you're sensitive to chemicals in the environment, if you've used different kinds of substances and have some degree of reactivity to it, even if you can tolerate it, but at a low dose, all of that means you need to be organic because your body cannot deal with these inputs from the outside very effectively. Your detoxification is either impaired for any number of reasons or genetically inefficient. Now, if you have a family history of having cancer, or your parents had reactivity to medication or any of those kinds of family history pieces, then again, organic's going to be important for you because there's probably some inefficiency in your body's ability to detoxify.
Mm,
When children are young, they are not good detoxifiers.
mm,
So, for children in general, this idea of organic is best. If you have deficiencies in key vitamins and minerals, and that could be because of diet, that could be because there's a lot of stress and you're churning through some of your resources, that could be because there's alcohol in your environment or smoking in the environment, and that could be smoking anything. It's just smoke. So those kinds of things in the environment, then organic is going to be more important
mm,
because any of those things I mentioned will make you less of an efficient detoxifier. So when those kinds of things are happening, then organic becomes more important.
mm,
Does everybody absolutely need to eat organically? I can't say that.
mm.
But I can say that there are some people who really should work as much as they can to have organic food.
Now, wouldn't you say most people, almost all people, have those things in their home? Alcohol, candles producing smoke, toxic cleaning agents. I mean, and also I think about what I feed for my children at home. And then they go to a wonderful school that I adore. They have a garden in the school. The kids play outside. They garden their own food. Well, some of their own food, but they still are fed, you know, things that I wouldn't allow them to eat at home. And that's just my little family. What about all these other families that aren't educated and don't know? What other things can they do to detoxify? Because at school we can't really control what they're eating unless we're feeding them, sending them lunch every day, which is a whole nother added task. You know, I mean, I'm just thinking, pile on. How can we detox? How can our children detox? How can we detox naturally? More water, electrolytes. What is your suggestion? And I do really want you to talk about. I'd love to hear your opinion. This is kind of like this is A, and the question B, water. What kind of water? Do we need a special system in our home? Is water okay out of our faucet? That kind of thing. So can that be follow up
It
A
can,
and B?
yes, yes,
Okay, great.
yes. So again, the most important detoxification can be work that we all do. What
Mhm,
you're saying is, when do you do it and how can you do it easily? Right?
mhm,
Because it is something that we all really could and quote should be doing because our
mhm,
toxic loads are much higher. And it's one of the big hypotheses about why certain kinds of cancer are increasing in our folks, and
mhm.
pancreatic cancer is one of those. The idea that there are toxins in the environment that are contributing to that is a
And
very real thing.
I want a
My daughter
little side
happened.
note. Sorry to interrupt. Little side note. Every doctor I've talked to, oncologist, GI doctor, because I've asked a lot of questions. Kyle's doctors all probably think I'm a nutty, which I am a little. I ask those questions. Why? Why is pancreatic cancer and GI cancers on the rise? All of them say the environment, what we're eating and drinking. All of them.
What we eat, what
Sorry to
we
interrupt.
drink, what we are exposed to in terms of the many multitudes of chemicals. Those chemicals can find their ways into our food. They find their ways into the upholstery or the carpets in our homes, into the paints in our homes, into the solvents we use to clean and also to put homes together. I mean, we have become a culture that is dependent upon these chemicals that our bodies have never seen before. Our bodies do a remarkable job of breaking things down, even things they haven't seen before, until they don't. And so let's talk about the kinds of things that can get in the way of detoxification. Understanding that gives us an idea about how we can approach it.
Okay.
So first thing is, believe it or not, stress. When we are
Surprise,
stressed,
surprise.
when we're stressed, it slows our digestion down.
Okay.
Anything that contributes to slow digestion or constipation, whether that happens to be how your gut has worked in the past or happens to be how the gut is working, those kinds of things can be lots of antibiotics in the past, lots of stress. It can be deficiencies in things like magnesium and B vitamins. All of those kinds of things slow the gut down. We detoxify by getting things out of us through our urine and through our stool. Anything that allows the stool to sit in the colon for longer, then we reabsorb that. So
Ugh,
we want to have at least one smooth, easy bowel movement a day. You sit down, you get up, it takes a minute, and you're done. If you
okay.
have two, that's totally fine. Anything less than that, any clumps, any pushing, any incomplete evacuation is constipation. And that will lead toward challenges with detoxification. Stress contributes to that by slowing the gut down and can induce that. Those deficiencies, B vitamins and magnesium, are caused by either a lot of stress running through our neurotransmitters or by things like alcohol. Um, Things like smoking independently add toxins, especially things like cadmium and arsenic add toxins. So if we have deficiencies, if we have stress, if we have gut issues, all of those things will lead toward toxicity. So we want to make sure that our guts are working well. That is non-starchy vegetables with high fiber, a lot of water, making sure that you have enough magnesium and B vitamins. Coenzyme Q10 is something that also helps us detoxify. And if you're low in that, and a very highly oxidized person is low in that, lots of chemical exposures, certainly people who smoke and drink. Um,
Mm,
so when you're working with detoxification, have a green smoothie made out of leafy greens, everyday chlorella, spirulina,
mm,
with a protein powder, because that is a natural detoxifier. And
mm,
you can use that every day to try to keep in balance. That can be your breakfast, that can be snacks. If you have that during the day, you can make it, you can bring it to work. It takes planning, it takes preparation, but it's a straightforward thing you can do. Make sure that there's a lot of water. Sometimes vagal nerve stimulators help the gut move and also help reduce stress when there aren't any other ways to do that. And so those, all of those things can contribute to detoxification. There are other kinds of supplements. There are binders that can be used, but those things are specific to the type of toxins folks may have, and you can be tested. Your urine can be tested. Sometimes blood tests can be done in order to check for toxins. And the specific ones will determine the specific approach to detoxify. But at the very basis, remove the toxic insult, whatever it is. For example, if folks are high in mercury, guess what that is? Do you know what the most common source of mercury is for us?
water, salmon, I don't know what.
Fish. Fish.
Fish, yeah.
We have toxified every kind of fish, freshwater, deep sea, sardines, whatever. They all have mercury. That doesn't mean you don't eat fish. That means if you have a challenge with detoxification, it should be minimized. If you have a
Interesting.
challenge with detoxification plus constipation, then you need to take fish oil instead of eating fish. Lead most commonly comes from old houses and old pipes in old houses. And mind you, these toxins can build up in the body over the course of time. So it's not just what's happening now, it's what's happened over your entire lifetime. And one of the big issues with our rapid weight loss drugs these days is
Yes.
that as you lose that fat quickly, you are releasing that toxic load into your body. And that can cause problems. You asked
Okay.
about water, and I know we're running sort of toward time. Make sure that you get enough water, right? You should have, for every 2 pounds of weight, you should have about an ounce. So that's just sort of a general rule of thumb.
Hmm.
For most folks, especially folks who are living in the city in old houses, you definitely need to filter your water. I mean, if you have reverse osmosis on the house, it's expensive. That would be the best kind of thing. Very often, you need to add electrolyte solutions to the water at least once a day to put good stuff back in. If you're in rural areas with good water, and sometimes in Missouri, being in the lead and the zinc area down in the Ozarks, the water may have lead and zinc in it. So you have to test the water. But if your water is good, that's great. It's okay to have minerals in the water. Um, City water generally has removed most toxins. If you cannot get a filtered system or something that you have, any kind of filter is better than none. Even a Brita filter is better than none. But then you let the water run for at least 30 seconds so that the water you have coming through and out of your faucet is water that hasn't been able to sit there and absorb metals from the old pipes.
Okay. So, reverse osmosis. What that was a lot of really great information. Thank you for all of that. We need to add minerals in, right? Because reverse osmosis water takes them
Takes
out.
takes all of that out. So if
Okay.
you add electrolytes, just like one packet of electrolytes, and this is not Gatorade because that's a sugar delivery system. So if you add one packet of electrolytes once a day, then you should be able to replete that.
So for my that we do that in my home. I have a system, and then we add electrolytes in the morning.
Mhm.
Um, and that is a minimal cost for those of you that are listening. So generally speaking, you think our water from the faucet is okay, but it's better if we should get it tested, but better if it is, bless you.
Well,
Um,
the water company will test your water. So if you're curious, you can just call them and you send in a sample and they'll test your water. If you're living in newer construction, then generally that water will be okay. Again, if a person is very sensitive to chemicals, then that statement may not hold, right? Because even water in new construction will be going through things like PVC pipe. So if a
right.
person is really sensitive to chemicals, if they are not able to detoxify, then that water will not be okay for them. Most of us do a good job of detoxification unless we have those things happening that impair our detoxification. So, there's perfect, and then there's how we operate as humans, which is efficient. We don't need to achieve perfection unless we are inefficient.
Okay. Wow. I mean, thank you so much for all this information. Can we talk about quickly why your I don't mean to rush you, but I know you have a hard stop time, but real quick, Palm, why you're at Palm, what Palm offers. We're only here in St. Louis, correct? Palm is only in St.
We
Louis.
are currently only in St. Louis, though there are
Okay.
hopes of expansion.
Okay.
And I came to St. Louis. I graduated from WashU as an
Mhm.
undergraduate, so I came back to St. Louis for this position. Oh my goodness, this is such a fantastic place.
It
So
really
it's
is.
designed to be personalized, proactive, preventive, and predictive. And there are tests that will run, for example, to see if anybody has currently with the DNA of cancer or full body MRIs to really be that preventive and predictive. It's based on a concierge model, which means that you get your own private physician and that person is on call for you. And, is that a higher cost? It is, but just imagine how many times you wish you would have been able to talk to the doctor, could never get them, and then are sent to urgent care. And so, what will you trade? Your one annual visit with all of your diseases not improved over the course of time, or someone who's really going to work with you to help reverse disease. And that's critical. Working to help empower you to reverse disease wherever possible, that increases your lifespan and, more importantly, your health span. So if you're interested in living healthier, longer, then you need a team to really support you in the kinds of
Mhm,
things that can help you accomplish that. So Palm not only has a full cadre of physician and nurse practitioners, but also personal trainers, yoga instructors, chiropractors, acupuncturists, massage therapy, nutrition, IV therapy, and many more things. It's
mhm.
an absolutely unique and wonderful facility here in Ladue.
I do, yeah, I agree, and I've been spending more time there. And for those of you listening, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Rocco, this would be something in addition to insurance, correct?
Yes, this is in
Okay.
addition to insurance. Your
Mhm.
labs, your radiology, those kinds of things would still be covered by your insurance. We serve as primary care doctors. We do functional medicine, which is the kind of medicine I've been describing, getting to the
Mhm.
root cause and working to reverse disease.
Do you work with children?
Children down to about 10 or 11.
Okay. All right. Well, I am a huge fan of Palm and now a huge fan of you. Thank you so much for your time today. If anybody has any questions, where can they find you?
Well, they can send them to you and you can send them to me, or
Okay.
they can email Palm, hroca at palmhealth.com.
Okay. Great. You heard it from him,
Okay.
folks. If you have any
Thank you
questions,
so much.
thank you so much. I'll let you go because I know you're a hard stop at 10. I appreciate your time and I look forward to continuing this relationship and some other, we'll keep the conversation going at some point. So
I'd,
thank you,
I'd be
Dr.
happy to
Roca.
come back.
Awesome.
Bye bye.
Happy
Have a good
holidays.
day.
You too.
To you.
Bye bye. Okay, y'all, thank you so much for listening today. That wraps up our show. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, comment, send to your friends. This podcast. Also, don't forget my buddy Michael Haddad at the Diamond Family is sponsoring this month's shows. They've got all sorts of cool deals, a fun pick your what is it called? Safe Cracker event where you're going to put in a code to try to win $100,000. If you go to that QR code in the top left hand of the screen, you can hold your phone over it and it'll direct you right to the Diamond Families page and give you more information. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was valuable. Happy holidays and